You are now tuned into the truth frequency.
We are TFR. TFR.
Truth Frequency Radio.
Welcome to Phoenix Rising Radio. Now is the time to lift your mind higher. Now is the time to rise above. I am your host, Phoenix, and welcome to tonight's broadcast. Good evening and welcome everyone. This is Phoenix. Hope you guys are doing well. This is Thursday, November 16th, 2017. And nearing the end of the week, we're past the middle of the month. On the downslide to the end of the month. We have a new moon coming up on this Saturday, the 18th. And if you haven't checked it out yet, go over to the oraclereport.com and you will find a link to Laura Walker and Andrew Foss during their new moon report and information. You'll find that very interesting. And there's a lot of insight on there, things that could kind of give you a good gauge of the direction things are going. It's titled Amok, Run Amok, A-M-O-K, Amok. And things are about to go amok. The energies are very intense. And we got a lot of karma coming up. She actually calls it kind of like instant karma type energetic. And it's going to run through from this weekend all into next month. Anyway, we'll talk a little bit more about that. But we are joined also this evening by NeSe. How's it going, brother?
It is rolling quite well, thank you.
Rolling quite well. You know, I never quite know how to take that when you say that because, yeah, I realize you're in a wheelchair, so I get the rolling part there. But then you have this whole resolution and the cannabis resolution and your, how you're an advocate for the legalization and for, all the beneficial products of cannabis. So every time you say it's rolling quite well, it makes me wonder, what exactly is he talking about?
So you're possibly saying there may be hidden messages, hiding messages? Am I occulting messages in the words that I share? Am I spelling these words correctly?
No. Dude, I tell you what, there's so many hidden things. And see, that's, I was telling everybody about this new moon report from Laura Walker and Andrew Foss over at oraclereport.com. And, it's about things coming to light. And the last time Laura was a guest on the program, you'll remember she said that we've entered a time period where things are going to come to light, things that have been hidden, and control structures that have been in place and corruption, etc., that have operated basically unabated for years and decades. man, it's going to be like the reckoning. It's a reckoning time, and we can see this in the political spectrum. We can see it in Hollywood, business, and it's going to become more intense, and all the way down to personal levels. I mean, this goes right into our hearts. I mean, we may dredge things up inside of us, through the process of life school and becoming better people that, perhaps was hidden in our subconscious. But things with relationships, families, businesses, companies, governments, all of it, the entire spectrum. It's an energetic we're going into. And it's going to be pretty intense, Ney Sey, from say like this weekend all the way up until, let me flip my paper calendar here, up around till like the 21st of December, all the way up to like right before Christmas. And we got some weird stuff happening next month because we're going into Mercury retrograde. And so it's going to be some weird energies. And a lot of people, I don't know about you, but I've seen a lot of people saying they feel kind of off, like something's happening. And, what I think it is, it's a fulfillment of this entire energetic that started earlier this year, kind of was really highlighted by the eclipse. And that was kind of a point where we really had to set our intent. And I think we've basically been in the scales. We've been in the scales of the universe to find out where our true heart lies, what our true intent is, and what's really our intention for ourselves in the world, and is it of a higher nature or a lower nature? And I think we're actually have been projected along this path of intent ever since the August 21st eclipse. And I believe it's really going to intensify. This is kind of like the point of no return coming up for the next 33 days after this weekend. And man, once we get to like the 21st, the 19th, 20th, 21st of December, Saturn's going to go into Capricorn, and boom, man, that door closes. That we've been in a portal, we've been in the gate. That gate opened on the 21st with the eclipse, and that door closes on the 20th and 21st, right around that time of December, and it's going to shut, and there's no going back. It's like the point of no return. So I think it's going to be a pretty interesting time, and we're going to see, really, like they had labeled, Laura had labeled us, run amok. We're going to see things run amok. We're going to see things come out of Hollywood, things come out of politics, things come out of businesses, crazy stuff that's going to be revealed. So, just advice.
It is incredible what we get away with when we have an excuse where Mercury's in retrograde, I woke up on the wrong side of the bed, my underwear a little too tight today, that guy cut me off at the, but I agree. There are other forces that we never pay attention to. Some of us do. That plays effect. Gas is odorless. People walk into gas and they die. So we put smell into the gas for preventative measures. And as the Boy Scouts always said, prepare for the worst and hope for the best. And as a Native American, we have those four identities of the individual, or the four parts of the individual, where it's physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. And each of those spokes or part of the individual have to work together in a proper ratio, so your wheel rolls smoothly. And so things are rolling, brother. And we just got to roll with it, right?
Yeah, that's all we can do. But I think we're all, as a collective, the entire world, if you look at it from the 40,000-foot view, this is kind of a day of reckoning type thing that's coming up, because we're going in a new direction. And I think what it is, well, I know what it is. There's a spiritual battle going on in the world. And we have to choose sides. So what side are you on? Are you on the side of good and the betterment of others? You were talking about community the other day. Are you for furthering the community, making the community better? Or are you going to go to the dark side? And that dark side, on the lower side of the bar, self-serving, greed, all the things, untoward lust, things that never end up well. I mean, people think they end up well. And you know what, dude? I think we've been going through, well, I know we have. We've been going through a time for a long time, and where, wow, absolute power, and people get in positions of power and money, and they just think they can do anything, and they could. And man, we're just seeing scandal after scandal after scandal of the poor, exploited, masses. And I don't know. I think we're just going to see more of this. We have to be positive about it, and aim high. We all have to aim high. Don't be afraid when this stuff all starts to come out and all shake out, and everything happens for a reason, And, one thing too, I've learned sometimes when we think things aren't going our way, we just have to trust and hope for the best, because somehow this all will level out. I used to call it the leveling, and that's the time we're in right now, is like, and when I meant by the leveling, things that are high have been lifted artificially higher than they actually should be. And those things that have been suppressed down lower than they should be it people, economic situations, social situations, whatever, spiritual, there's going to be a shaking. And I think that shaking is happening right now, and things are going to level out. And that which is high is going to come down. And in that process, it elevates the things that have been suppressed, because it's those things, these entities, powers, companies, individuals that have been artificially, by greed, fraud, by subterfuge, by violence, have lifted themselves higher than they should be. They're coming down. That stuff's coming down. It's all going to level out, because I've used the example before of like New York City, Wall Street. You have some guy, maybe they have a beautiful office. He's got a corner office, nice glass view of the street and the skyline, and he walks by in his $5,000 suit, going to work. Got a fresh copy of Wall Street Journal under his arm. And he passes by the hot dog guy, kind of looks at him down his nose a little bit, and he gets in his elevator. Who's better? The guy in the high office who has basically exploited, a lot of situations and got elevated himself what he thinks higher than other individuals, or the hot dog man? Because I tell you what, when everything works out and falls, when everything levels out, the guy who had all the stuff in the paper stocks and the funds and all these different things, if it all goes bust, the hot dog man's going to be better off, literally. I mean, a hot dog cart, have some hot dogs and who knows, pretzels, whatever he has. But, things are going to level out. That's all I can say. And this even goes to injustices that went back centuries ago. And I think you know what I'm talking about. And we're going to address some of those things from the historical side of Native Americans. Because tonight we're going to talk about Thanksgiving a little bit. Yeah, it's about a week, 7 days until Thanksgiving right now. But NeSe is going to be sharing with us an interesting historical perspective of Thanksgiving from the Native American side. This is something we don't hear a lot. So,
well, when we talk about the elitist and these people that are ridiculously wealthy, 10 years ago, if you had $1 million in the bank, you would make about $550 in interest. And the Queen makes, I think it's $30 million every 24 hours a day because of the money that she has in the bank. And from the upbringing that these elitists go through with their children, that they purposely make them harder and cold. So when it passes one torch to the next generation, that they still have minimal feelings when they make these ungodly, wealthy decisions that affect the trickle down process. And hopefully, you can think when some of these older people in the industries are getting closer to their days that are limited, and all of their money can't buy them the new body because only a few people have a gazillion dollars. But they start hopefully realizing, what have I left? What is my legacy? And may that be enough to get some of these people to open their consciousness to where do you make the 0 point? Where do you say, okay, this is where I stop and change directions? Whether it be, especially if you're wrapped up in fear, where it's like, okay, I've had enough of, this, that, or the other thing. I'm stopping right now, and now I'm moving towards the light. Or even if you could stop and take a look around and see who around you needs a little hand, and kind of help them a little bit towards the light, because,
Well, see, there's an interesting dynamic going on with all of that. They have some new finance rules and new things going on. It's called green finance, and there's some rules to it. And this actually, believe it or not, is coming out of was based out of the UN, and started years ago. I mean, with the Fabian Society and Buckminster Fuller. He was a big guy who for redistribution of wealth, and they had all these theories and ideas for making things fair. And you can't make things fair by taking wealth from other people and giving it. Just like, we're going to redistribute wealth, the barrel of a gun. You can't do that. But they've actually put forward a lot of research into this and plans. And what they've come up with, they actually have what's called green finance and some of these sustainable green bonds. And what they've done is there are rules to some of these. And we're going to start seeing more and more of this, and it's going to become more public. And they've been running pilots of this for a few years, and very successfully. And what it is you have these green bonds that are going to be traded on sovereign levels, and they're high frequency traded, and they make insane amounts of money, dude, because it's just like trading in between nations. And the groups, the individuals, nations, or whoever, companies, hedge funds, whatever, are invested in these special investments that are going to have higher yields than normal investments. The rules are that they cannot take all the profit out of it and just get out and take it. Or they just can't take all the profit and like buy islands and stuff, like Richard Branson and other people, Soros, whatever. You have to take a certain amount of the profit from all of these bonds that are generated, and they would be rolled into projects, these humanitarian projects, these infrastructure projects that would rebuild nations, not just the United States, but other nations. China's big into this, the Belt and Road and rebuilding infrastructure. So bridges would be rebuilt, roads would be rebuilt, but not only that, humanitarian things that help provide jobs and help people. And so that way, what has happened over the centuries, where the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, it would actually be a legal stopgap that would prevent that. And yes, the rich can make very good profits off of these bonds, but a large portion, 50% or more of those profits, must be directed into approved projects. And so that way it doesn't go to their buddies or anything. It's all got to be transparent, approved, and highly accounted for. And that way we will stop the process of this continual thing of the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer. This way, as wealth is created, jobs are created, hospitals are built, schools are built, things that teach people. So I think that's pretty good. And the fact it came out of the UN, shocking. I mean, whoever thought anything good would come out of the UN, but apparently it has.
Well, it's funny, in a sense, what you just described in the whole macro and the microcosm is kind of the whole principle or the basis of the cannabis res solution, where it is more than just a business. It's a way of life of utilizing the cannabis plant to provide the basic necessities of food, shelter, and clothing on the reservation. And then once those basic necessities are provided to everyone that resides within the reservation or is a citizen of the reservation, for lack of a better term, then you go on to the next needs that need to be met. And it's simplex, but I think we silly humans, with all the red tape and additives and preservatives, we just make it so ridiculously complex.
We always do. That is the way it is. I have a friend. He overanalyzes everything. He can take something that seems pretty straightforward, and the next thing you know, he's got like a 25-step process into how it will probably work out and the end results, and he'll take it out and extrapolate it into like the coming years. I mean, sometimes I got to stop him, like, whoa, stop. But yeah, he's an analytical thinker, and analytical, which is good, and to be able to think processes through. But sometimes we are too smart for our own good, I think. Some things are just better the way they are. Simple's better in many things.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you. And of course, this brings it back to the Anishinaabe thing, where if the dominant society, when they first got here, if they were more susceptible to learning the practices of the indigenous people in their synchronistic living, but also with their symbiotic relationship with their community. And it would have been a little bit different than what we have today, maybe. But what ifs? It is what it was.
Oh, it is what it was. Yeah, that's interesting. I was watching a thing on Pemmican today, and they were talking about, he had a pretty interesting thing. He was talking about a people's group out in the West, and they were were Scottish immigrants who had, well, how can I say this? They were the children, the descendants of Native American women who had married Scottish frontiersmen, which was really bizarre. I was like thinking about it. They made their own people group, so they were like the Scottish and Native American, and they were meat gatherers. They would hunt buffalo, and the men would go out and hunt buffalo, and the women would process the buffalo. And they said one woman could process 10 buffalo a day. I mean, totally cut them up and butcher them, process them, scrape the hides, everything of 10 buffalo in one day. That's like blows my mind, because I can't even imagine cleaning a buffalo. And they did it all on the ground, of course.
You've hunted deer, right?
Yeah, cleaning deer is one thing, but
okay,
I mean, that size of 10 deer. I mean,
right, but when you think about it, the Anishinaabe, we make claims, and I'll make the claim that we've been in North America over 125,000 years, and when you live in an area that long, you go through the whole basic trial and error of don't eat those berries, eat this food, try that. This is how it grows best. And they were agrarians and they were farmers. But when you go hunting for a deer, and when you kill a deer, you can take the thigh bone and you can go to a rock, and if you hit it on this rock in this specific spot, it will break into 3 pieces. And all 3 of those pieces are utilized to tan the hide. Like one is a scraper and one is a stretcher and one is a beater. you know,
Very-
and then you take the brain of the deer, and the brain of the deer is the exact amount needed to tan the hide. You know, and the Native Americans knew this. Same with the bison in the plains. You know, they knew that, you know, every micro piece of that bison, because they've been hunting the bisons for thousands and thousands of years. So yeah, it was more or less like a factory. And, you know, think about it back then when work was work, you know, but they'd love to play. So the faster you got all the work done for the day, the more you get to play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Work hard, play hard.
Oh, yeah. Fascinating. I don't want to get too far off topic, but, you know, thinking about the bison when they when full capacity in North America, what an amazing thought. I mean, they would sometimes, herds of them would travel by, you know, a half mile wide for 3-4 days at a time, all going in one direction. Anyway, we're rolling up on a break here. We'll be right back after this. We're going to talk about a lot of things this evening, what's going on energetically, what's going on in the news, and topic of Thanksgiving that's coming up from a Native American perspective. Anyway, don't go away. We'll be right back after these breaks.
Thanks for being.
No hate, no hype, no fear. We are TFR Frequency Radio.
There's something happening here, but what it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there, telling me I got to beware. I think it's time we stop, children. What's that sound? Everybody look what's going down.
Here we are again and again and again as we keep rolling along day after day. Love seems gray like the skin on a dying man. How are you doing, Phoenix?
Pretty good. You're just like a ray of sunshine. And on the you know, that reminded me of a story rolling along. We were talking about the buffalo and all this. I was actually speaking to a friend earlier today. You've never talked to him or heard him on the show. Fire farmer. Joe out in Texas. He's a rancher. He has a 5,000 acre ranch out there. And funny story, sort of funny, kind of sad, but interesting. His great grandfather, where Joe's ranch is up in the northern part of Texas there, they have a real hard time with like growing crops, have to irrigate. It's not too hospitable, if you know what I mean. And, you know, I was asking him one time, like, why, and it was a multi-generational ranch. I'm like, why did you end up getting 5,000 acres there? Couldn't you have found a more fertile spot? He said, well, so my great grandfather was a settler, and he was going along here, and he had a horse drawing a wagon, and he had a cow behind him, and his wife, and they were rolling along through that area, and the wagon wheel broke. So he stopped. He had to fix the wagon wheel, and so tied the horse up. And while he was fixing the wagon wheel, he looked up. The horse got loose and ran away, and he couldn't catch his horse. So there he was with a cow, a broken wagon, and his wife, and all the belongings of the world in that wagon. And right there is where they made their ranch, because they couldn't go any further. Joe told me he actually had a piece of the wagon, the buckboard from the wagon, and they had it built into their house there, but they've been there for multi-generations. But that's how they ended up where they're at, because the wagon broke down and the horse ran away. Things were tough, man. Things were tough. You know, they're tough now in their own ways, but people have no idea the tenacity and the strength it took just to get by, just to wake up the next day and move on. I mean, it was not the way it is now. I mean, people stress out about things that we have to deal with in our society and the way things have been set up economically. It's tough, but you know what? You know, a lot of people long for the good old days. You know, oh man, things were rough. I mean, you know, you were talking about breaking bones of deer to scrape hides and stuff. So, you know, all societies go through that age of survival, if you will.
Well, you know, I think because as the convenience of society keep getting easier and our actions become lazier, that, you know, back in those days, people were active and they were very fit and they were in shape because the body was continuously moving. But when the Europeans came here, they were so bound and determined to live in according to the way they were raised in Europe instead of adapting to their surroundings. You know, because that's the whole thing about when they talk about subduing the land, you know, that this is your land to conquer and stuff, where it just seems so simple. Why not living according to your surroundings? And then if you would just mimic the Native Americans, then you know how to live in the surroundings. And then if you watch the Native Americans, they mimic the animals that live in their surroundings to know how to survive. So it's, again, simplex.
You know, that reminds me, a thought came to mind when you're talking about all that. Down in Australia, the Aborigine, when the Europeans came into Australia, the Aborigine were treated really badly. But an interesting story of modern times, when the Aborigine, you know, were on the outskirts of some of the cities, the built-up areas that the Europeans were building there in Australia, you know, they thought, well, you know, we should be more benevolent and help them. And so a group of really super do-gooders, they got together, they got the government funding. It's like, you know, we're going to go out to this Aborigine tribe that's nearby, and they all sleep in huts. So they got enough money to build houses for all of them, like these pretty simple 1 room, 2 room structures with a roof on them, and you know they were made of like adobe or something. They're very solid structures, you know, doors, windows, the whole thing. And so they built them. The Aborigines were very excited about it. So they left and, you know, feeling very good because they had done such good for these Aborigine people. And a team went back out a couple months later to see how things were going and see how they're adapting to their new structures. They got there, all the Aborigine huts were still there, and they were all still living in them. And this entire line of brand new houses that they had built were there, but nobody was living in them. And they're like, they couldn't understand. They looked, and what had happened is the tribe started using the houses that the Australians had built for them as storage places. They stacked firewood in it so it would get wet for their bonfires. They like used them for storage. They had animals in them, like little barns and stuff, and they were just like mind blown, gobsmacked. They couldn't believe that they wouldn't do that. And they asked them, you know, like, why are you still living in your huts, and why didn't you move into here? Because they said, this is where we live. These are our homes. You know, why would we do that? But thank you for doing this. They were thankful and everything, but you know, they're gonna still do what they do, what they had learned to do, for centuries or generation through generation had taught them to do. You couldn't force them to change.
Well, this is some of the discussion that Native Americans have about our situation that we're living in. Can some people say this is our curse because we assimilated? Is because in the romanticism of looking back on how the indigenous people lived in this harmonious way with their surroundings, that's pretty incredible. And from my research, the word utopia was created because of Thomas. Oh, I'm losing the author's name now. But he was a European that came here and saw the way the indigenous people were living their way of life and in accordance to their surroundings. And he was just fascinated by it. He wrote a book about it, and it was Utopia. But his name is just going to haunt me now. But this way of simple living in life is all romantic and everything, but I still, especially in my situation, being blinded in a wheelchair, well, the claim is back then I would be held in high regards because of my situation, but I wouldn't want to be cleaning hides, to that extreme as they did back then. But their teachings and their basic way of living life, yes, I wish a lot more people were able to gravitate to that concept of the indigenous thinking or the standards that they lived by, and whether this may be all standards.
Let me interject real quick. I did a search for, I thought it was Moore, but I wasn't sure before I say it. Thomas More was the author of Utopia. Yeah. Yeah,
but it's just, yesterday.
But he published that in 1516 though. So I have to look more into that. Yeah, it was published in, wait a minute. He lived 1478 to 1535, is published in 1516. Yeah, work of fiction and socio-political stature. But the utopian type of lifestyle, it's funny how societies always try to change other people's, and we have this here in modern day United States in 2017. You have political groups that demand that people think a certain way. That's why we've got a really bizarre thing going on now. Like if you don't think this way, you're wrong. Or if you're not like this, you're wrong. It's social engineering. And so it's same social engineering that built houses for the Aborigine they wouldn't use and forced people of American Native descent onto desolate reservations and removed their loincloths and leggings and made them, force them to wear breeches and shirts and leather shoes. That same dynamic is still happening in the world today. It really is. The social engineering and the social justice warriors, the snowflakes you call them, demand that everybody think like them, and it's weird.
But to me, it just goes back to the agenda of the power elites or the powers that should not be, and the ends to the means and their justifications. And we as sheeple, black sheeple, have you any soul? No, sir. No, sir. Just a gaping hole.
Yeah. And that's the part too. The spiritualization, despiritualization of society that they would like and filled with emptiness, where people are always searching. The spiritual aspect of the Native American and all indigenous people. And it's very, very important for all of us. It gives us moral balance, moral guidance to do the right thing. That's a big part of society and life school is learning to do the right thing, not because doing the right thing because, oh boy, I hope I don't get caught. No, doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do and you want to do the right thing. That we've lost something. We've lost something, lost the moral compass, and not by willingly done. It was forced upon our society to lose that moral compass. And that's a frightening thing because when a society loses a strong moral backing, a society can be talked into doing extremely bad things, under the color of and guise of law or doctrine or theory or whatever. That's when people end up in mass being hung on trees or shot in basements and wheeled out in wheelbarrows for some political agenda. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. But, just around the corner, we have the opportunity to gather together and sit down with our friends and family and say grace and chow down real quick so we can hit all those sales.
Yeah, right. Forget the sales. Don't do that. We talked about it the other night, Tuesday night, a little bit about Thanksgiving. And, before we get into what you're going to say, a lot of people, most of our listeners are aware of, not from us particularly, but others, the QAnon and other people are talking about all this, that there's an unusually large amount of sealed indictments around the Washington, D.C., the Philadelphia, and Virginia area, and in other places. I mean, over 1,000. And there's a lot of speculation on what this could be. We talked about William Cooper years ago. Always warned everybody about Thanksgiving. Well, you know what? That tide could have turned, and it seems like things are being turned on their ear for the powers that be. And there's an interesting thing that happens in Washington, D.C. on Thanksgiving. That is all the Congress, all the Senate, all the State Department, all these people, they leave. The offices are shut down. It's a holiday. And they all go to their families. Most of them, probably 98% of them leave town. Or more, maybe 99% leave town. And that would be an opportune time if they needed to gather evidence or enter offices in Washington, D.C. to get what they need if they're really going to drain the swamp. So I thought I'd put kind of a twist on the whole Thanksgiving thing because some of those sealed indictments could be unsealed and things could happen on Thanksgiving, but not the way William Cooper always thought. That'd be the powers that be against the people. But perhaps, just perhaps, the white hats are real and they are standing up and taking action. And it's the power of truth, Constitution, and the people going after the swamp. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there as a possibility before you get into what you're going to share with us.
Well, I would be absolutely excited if integrity was to come back to Washington, D.C., because then maybe, just maybe, truth would too.
Yeah, you know what? I think it would really help our society. It would help our nation. And also it would restore some of our integrity to the world. It really would, because, everybody in the United States sees this stuff and knows it's going on, and so do the rest of the world. And it's really tarnished the once, good image of the United States, even if that image was partially false, but still it's really harmed things. But, we have Thanksgiving coming up in 7 days.
Oh, that was a quick Passover. Sorry, I wasn't ready for that one. Yes.
No, it's not. No, it's not Passover. It's Thanksgiving.
Well, it'll be a bunch of passing over the gravy. In this household, we make a lot of gravy. Unfortunately or fortunately, it happens to be my favorite meal. And sometimes I direct people to make a really mean venison wild rice stuffing. But as you look at Thanksgiving, and if I can preface with my YouTube page, I did make a playlist with some videos that I perused, and I think the playlist is called Thanksgiving or Thanks for Taking, but it's under the Cannabis REZ Solution YouTube page. But yeah, the story that we're told in the schools are really different from what are discussed within the native world. And well, you want to share real quick, Phoenix, what you remember being told?
Well, the story was that we got when, and relying from memory as a child, was that the Puritans who came over were in a really bad situation, and their crops had failed. Things weren't going well. They didn't know what they were doing. You know, they're Europeans in the wilderness. And what happened, they were befriended by the Native Americans, and the Native Americans showed them how to plant, how to care for their plants, where to find the animals to hunt. And the legend goes that we were told as children was that because of this, because that they had made it through the year and hadn't starved because of the help of the Native Americans, that they celebrated with a day of Thanksgiving and a special feast, and they invited all the Native Americans that were near them that helped them, and they all joined together in a feast of wild game and the abundance of their farms and gardens. That's the story we got.
And yeah, and I agree. That's what I was raised to in the public schooling, and everybody got together and we chowed down with that 7 deadly sin of gluttony. and yeah, but then as an indigenous person and taking the time to go look at the difference between history and his story, all of a sudden you start finding this different perspectives and different, I would say, well, each individual gives merit on its own account, but they're from many different accounts. So in a nutshell, the Puritans from the United Kingdom went to Holland. From Holland, they went to the New World. The New World was discovered, of course, after Columbus, and from Columbus up to the Pilgrims coming to Plymouth Rock, which there is no actual proof of anything that there was a rock which they land upon. They came within a bay, and it was strategically, if you look at the bay and you look at the original mapping and stuff, the strategic aspect of this bay is understandable why they picked this as the possible point of initiating that wedge into the more northern of the East Coast. Because by this time already down in the south of the East Coast, around the Caribbeans and Florida and up that way, we're already not heavily populated, but the Europeans were coming there more and more. However, just perchance, question mark, where the Puritans landed on Plymouth Rock, Massachusetts, it happened to also coincide right between the boundaries of the Anishinaabe people and what was called the Iroquois Confederacy. You've heard us discuss this before. The Iroquois Confederacy was a bunch of Native American tribes that pledged or made an allegiance, or the wampum belt was shared, that if the Anishinaabe flexed their muscle and wanted any more territory, that they would gather together and take on the Anishinaabe. So then the Puritans came, and like you were saying, there was challenges with trying to live with the standards of the time, and them arriving so close to winter put a lot of challenges on them. However, before that even occurred, the original Native Americans that were there all died because of the plagues that were bestowed upon the indigenous people from the time of the Europeans after Columbus came. So the place where they landed was already an establishment, but there was nothing there but bones in the dead, because they died in such a quick sweeping. There wasn't even the opportunity to bury them.
Mm-hmm.
So as discussed, the Native Americans came and they made fair treaties, because, here were a bunch of men and women, and the Native Americans' thoughts are, you don't bring your women where you're going to create war, so let's greet them and work with them. So as this continued to work, and they were taught about the harvest and everything, they were taught about the ceremony, ritual, or the feasting or gathering of the harvest, where you give thanks. You give thanks for your bounty of your crops and everything, and you share this with others. And so this was one thing that was shared with the Puritans and with the early settlers in there. However, as time progressed and the Indian Wars started occurring, next thing you know, that orders were given to slaughter Native Americans, that the only way that manifest destiny is going to occur, because it was very difficult to take the indigenous people and create or turn them into slaves. A lot of them were captured and brought down into the Caribbeans, where they were sometimes brought back to Europe. And actually that's Squanto. That was one of his stories, and he has a little bit of play with the Puritans and the Pilgrims and that. But then all of a sudden there was a demand for the Native Americans to either give up their lands or die. And so then they started doing these raids with Native Americans that were willing to team up with them, and then they started destroying the Anishinaabe people. And they would go and they would have these huge raids, and sometimes the standing orders were everybody over the age of 14 try to capture and kill everybody under that age. Sometimes the order was nobody lives till dawn.
Truth Frequency Radio is your #1 source for news. This is Truth Frequency Radio.
The wicked ones obviously under heavy Masonic influence.
Welcome to Phoenix Rising Radio. Now is the time to lift your mind higher. Now is the time to rise above. I am your host, Phoenix, and welcome to tonight's broadcast. Welcome back to the second hour of Phoenix Rising Radio, right here on Truth Frequency Radio. Now's the time. Now's the time to lift your mind higher. You know, as I said at the beginning of the program, if you didn't catch it, I was talking about the energetics that are coming up. And we're going to go through a time here, starting like this weekend, taking us all the way up into the Christmas holidays here near the end of the year, that things may get kind of odd. They may get kind of odd. We're coming up onto a doorway that's closing. You know, we talk about rise above. And what exactly does that mean? It means exactly what it says, to rise above your current situation. We all have to do this. You know, I say a lot of things on this program, and have for years, like say no to fear. It is so important. You know, we may see some things here through these holidays. We're talking about Thanksgiving this evening and what it means, the history of it, Ney Sey's viewpoint of it as a Native American. And, you know, we're coming into a festive period. We have Thanksgiving, which is a greatly enjoyed holiday in Canada, the United States, and a couple other places, Caribbean. It's a big holiday, big family holiday. Then you have Christmas, you have Hanukkah, you have Kwanzaa, you have all these holidays during the season, the holiday season. And it's a very emotional time. It's a very joyous time. But we need to be aware during all of this, it may be this year a tumultuous time, because this year is a little different than other years. We're coming up to a doorway, and we've been heading through this doorway. The gate opened months ago, and primarily during the eclipse. We're heading up on this doorway, and the doors are going to close. The doors are going to close. And the question you have to ask yourself is, what direction are you headed? And this is a lot of soul searching. This is a lot of karmic things coming to a head. But we're all going to be projected into a trajectory here that's going to last for quite a few years. And things are going to change. I just want to let you know things are going to change. And we've been talking about this, not harping on it, but I talked about it during the solar eclipse time. We've had guests on who've spoken about it. NeSe and I have talked about it at different times. And now is the time. Literally, now is the time. We're coming up on this weekend, this new moon. By the time we reach the next new moon in December, which I believe is the 19th and the 20th, right around that week, the 19th, 18th, 19th, and 20th, the new moon's actually, let's see, what do we have here? Let me check the time. I'd always write in my paper, EMP proof calendar. 1:31 a.m. on December 18th is the new moon. So from this new moon to that new moon, and that's when Saturn goes into Capricorn on the 19th, things are going to basically change. And we're going to be at a point where what we have decided for ourselves, our future, is really going to be set in concrete, and we're going to be going there. And, you know, we're coming up on Thanksgiving, which is a time of giving thanks, but it's also a time of retrospection and inner thought, inner looking, time of repentance, if you will. It's a time of karma, and it all begins in earnest this weekend. Anyway, let's get back into the topic of Thanksgiving. They say ran right in up to the commercial there. Why don't you continue on there?
So, yeah, but real quickly, please, if you got an opportunity, so Phoenix can say thanks. If you go to tfrlive.com and become a member and support the truth and support Phoenix and support some of the advertisers on the site. Do it through iHeart. Listen to us, pass it on, share it, and hello, chat room.
Yeah, that's much appreciated. This has been literally a labor of love. I mean, it's Ney Sey can tell you, and the other hosts on TFR, it's not like we're driving around in Lamborghinis over here. I will guarantee you this is truly a labor of love. Not all, but most alternative media is, I mean, man, people are trying to get the truth out and do the alternative view through a lot of research and digging. It's not a hugely profitable thing, but you know what? Internally, it is the heart, and for mankind, it really is. It's very awesome. And we meet so many nice people. I mean, I know Ney Sey has, I know I have over the years, just, fantastic people, listeners, just unbelievable, great people that I'm humbled that I can call them my friends. Anyway, let's get back into the topic, man. Let's get back into Thanksgiving.
Okay, so then now the Puritans are here and they are well established, and now there's other settlers coming and more Europeans coming, and the Native Americans and the relationship with the settlers are not going well. And then we get the French Indian Wars and the settler wars and the Indian Wars, where what was occurring is these massacres would happen, and then there would be these huge feastings and celebrations, and then it got so frequent that General Washington at the time said that, okay, we're just going to have one day of thanks. And so then Washington declares a day of thanks. And it wasn't quite established yet until Lincoln came into it. But I want to go back to the strategic placement of where this whole thing occurred, because it occurred right in the center of the boundaries between the Anishinaabe and the Iroquois Confederacy. So if you think of where would be a better place to start a disruption, where the indigenous people have already discussed and said, okay, this is our hunting grounds, and this is where we stay, and this is where you stay, and this is kind of like neutral ground where we give grace to the situation. And this is just happens to be the spot where the Puritans land.
That is interesting. I think one of the first European landings was Georgetown, actually, right? Was that it? The mystery town that vanished.
Oh, no, I'm thinking Ragnarok. Is that? Well, I mean, settlements were, they were cropping up all the way down from the Floridas, and they just kept, working their way, because Columbus in 1492, and then I'm forgetting, in the Caribbeans, the Cuba and the what were those called, the privateers and the oh man, I'm having a
the Caribbean islands, Cuba, Puerto Rico, all those islands down in there.
Well, those were huge Spanish trades where a bunch of Native Americans from the north were being kidnapped and captured and brought down to the Caribbeans along the coast, and then they would either be put in South America or Mexico to work in the gold mines, or they would be sent back to Europe for slavery.
Mm-hmm.
And this was like the biggest challenge, because a lot of Tisquanto, this is what occurred to him. He got snatched up and got brought to Europe, worked his way back to England. From England, got hired on as a guide and came back to that whole Bay Area where he originated from, and found out that, you know, his whole family was wiped out by diseases. And so he went back north to the greater tribe, you know, where a larger proportion of the tribe was still there. And this was the first massacre site, the Piraquat. Over 700 men, women, and children were slaughtered. I want to say it was within the next 20 years after the Pilgrims and their Plymouth Rock, where they originally started the settlement. And that was the biggest feast that was put on record after the slaughtering. And the town declared it a day of thanks. And so they declared it a feast day. And so they had this, and that was the initiation of it. Then it started going rampant to where it got to the point of where they're like saying, look, we're having too many massacres. But they weren't upset about the massacres. They were upset about all the partying that went down. Because the indigenous people, you know, if you heard me talk about a powwow, you know, when they do these celebrations, they usually are in the 4 quadrants of the great cycle of the year. So like winter solstice, they would have a celebration. And then in the spring equinox, they'd have a celebration. And in the summer solstice. And the fall celebration was the Thanksgiving celebration. It was the harvest, you know, the celebration of the harvest. You know, but then it was
the celebration of the harvest. I think that's pretty global and goes back for millennia. And people would celebrate, you know, in all cultures when the harvest would come in different ways. But they would have a time of feasting because the work was over, the crops were gathered, and winter was coming. And yeah, I think it was a pretty universal thing with Native Americans, indigenous people, Europeans, Scandinavians, you name it, Africans. It was a pretty universal thing.
Well, there's the records of the Pilgrims. There's, I want to say, less than 5 actual accounts of the Puritans that were there at the whole original settlement. I think they were different people had their diaries or their memoirs, you know, and so there's conspiracy theory, you know, which I've dug into somewhat, where it all was a lie, that they were the whole purpose of this settlement was to try to cause disruption between the Anishinaabe and the Iroquois Confederacy, and so they could get the Confederacy to start attacking the Anishinaabe, you know, because it was all based upon the America could not continue to grow unless the Native Americans were wiped out and destroyed.
Well, they used them, turned them against one another. They got allies. The French and Indian Wars. I mean, if you've read The Last of the Mohicans or seen the movie, you know, the Native Americans, they teamed up. You know, some with the French, some with the English, and you know, for whatever reasons, the English promised them one thing, the French promised another, and they battled against one another, and so they pitted them against each other and against also separate Europeans, the French and the English.
Well, the thing is that the Anishinaabe, they were with the French. And, then you had the French-Indian Wars. And then when France and America, when they came with their treaties or they came with their agreements to stop the wars, what they did is they split the Anishinaabes' land right in half. And then we have Canada, and that's the boundaries between Canada and the United States. And it literally divided the Anishinaabe people. The French called us Ojibwe, and the English called us Chippewa. So if you go and you look at these early maps, you can see where at one point it used to just all say Chippewa on the early English maps, and on the French maps it all said Anishinaabe. But it was all literally by design. The genocide of the indigenous people it can't be argued. It was by design, and we got our rear ends handed to us. And it's a sad thing. And Vine Deloria, he calls it systematic genocide, because it's still occurring today. Just with the fact that they make us have a number and they check our blood quantum. Even if I teach my children the language and teach them the culture and teach them the ceremonies, they're not considered Native Americans. So we're still not winning when it comes to this. And the sad fact is that it is initiated with this Thanksgiving. And it breaks my heart, because some of my warmest memories are at my grandparents' table that would stretch out to feed like 16. And we would have like 20 people in the home at a time doing Thanksgiving. And now it breaks my heart where, you're lucky if you can get 6 people, maybe 10 people together.
Yeah, I realize that, and that is due to our society, people traveling, different commitments and all of that. But the fact that there's still this celebration of Thanksgiving, for whatever reason, and there's mixed reasons, there's all type of controversy about its beginnings, its origins, where it was. There's actually a fight between Boston and Virginia about who is the true birthplace, or not birthplace, but the first Thanksgiving. And so, the Virginians say it happened here, and Massachusetts, they say it happened here. So, it's controversy. It's not clear in history, but all in all, dude, I think it's a great thing. I love Thanksgiving because it's a time for us to come together, to forgive and to give thanks. And, to truly give thanks, we have to forgive. We really have to forgive and to be thankful, gratitude. For the entire nation or people to come together in a spirit of gratitude, if they can overcome the social things, is a great thing. And unfortunately, that spirit of gratitude, like you're saying, your grandmother's place, it's something's happened. People used to come together and truly be thankful, say a prayer and be thankful and happy. But now it's actually, it's associated, and this may be because social engineering also telling people it's like this. A lot of people have stress during the holidays and Thanksgiving because you pit families together based upon tradition. And a lot of time there's angst in there and there's animosity in there. You get people together who aren't normally together. And sometimes there's like problems. A friend of mine used to really get all stressed during Thanksgiving because it was the only time of year he would meet his brother. His brother would end up drinking too much and he would get in a fight with his brother. It was like clockwork. And when I say get in a fight with his brother, dude, I'm not talking about they're arguing over a football team. I'm talking it would come to blows. These guys would get it out because they were. This is my a friend of mine is a tough guy, and lives down south, and he just, it was horrible. But that they don't do that anymore, and they got through that, but it was years. And he couldn't disappoint his mother, and his brother wouldn't disappoint his mother, so they were pitted together. It was like putting two animals, like it was like putting a lion and a gazelle together, like, okay, in this cage you go for one day. It's like inevitable there was going to be a fight. So what I'm trying to say is there's a lot of angst and anxiety that comes with this, but we have to concentrate on the good. It's kind of like this goes back to the whole thing where I was talking about this entire energetic that we're getting ready to enter this weekend, taking us up to this new door, if you will, that closes in December. There's going to be anxiety. There's going to be tension, but we have to rise above that and be better than that. And that, I think that's all ties in with this Thanksgiving. It might be an interesting Thanksgiving too, because a lot of people report that stuff. Have you ever experienced that where there's a lot of anxiety with Thanksgiving?
Oh, absolutely. And even though as much as we were talking about, the fond memories of going to my grandparents, I loved going there with the family and stuff, but my grandfather was an elder of the church, and me being Native American and in spirituality, at one point or another, it would be him going into how I was going to hell because I didn't take George, I didn't take Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior, and we would get into this argument, and that would always be the downside, because at one point, Grandpa and Ney Sey would be getting into it about spiritual belief, and it would end up that I'm a heathen going to hell. So, so I know exactly what they were talking about with that anxiety about it. But it is so interesting, when you really critically look at Thanksgiving, and I don't mean to bring so many ants to the picnic, but the corporations are the ones that are making all the money on this day. Look at football. How much football makes on this day? And
as much as we used to, dude. The NFL's getting hammered. They're getting hammered because of the protest of the kneeling. The photographs that they're showing, I don't watch football anymore. The photographs of the stadiums are like 1/3 full. The NFL is getting hit, so they may not do that well. But I see what you're saying about the corporations. The complex of industries that have sprung up around this. But you've always had that. I mean, even let's go back to 100 years ago, before there was television. Thanksgiving was a good time for the local butcher. It was a good time for the local baker. Maybe not as big as it is now, because a lot of people did things themselves. But yeah, it spurs economic growth.
Well, how many holidays are actually recognized by the government? Isn't there 5?
Holy smokes!
Where
what do you like Wikipedia or something?
Christmas, Easter, Memorial Day, Columbus. No, they stopped. No, Columbus Day they still do as a federal holiday, right?
Hold on, I've got it. I pulled it up, and we have
quick little fingers there.
You got it. New Year's Day, Martin Luther King Jr. Day, George Washington's birthday, Memorial Day, Independence Day, Labor Day, Columbus Day, Veterans Day, Thanksgiving Day, and Christmas Day. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 official holidays.
Ooh, interesting. I guess I'm going to have to do a little research on those. But I mean, even if you don't recognize any of those days. I love what Dick Gregory says. He goes, you recognize it because when you want to go to the bank and cash your check on one of those days, you're recognizing that it's a holiday because you can't get to the bank.
You got it. And well, we can get to a commercial. We're rolling up on another break here. Our last one.
And please send me your gravy recipes and your stuffing recipes.
Ooh, gravy. You know what I tell Lake? Gravy is the elixir of God. I love gravy. It's like a magical thing that she makes. She makes gravy. I'm like, how do you do this? I love gravy. Anyway.
Giblets or no giblets?
It doesn't matter to me.
You're listening to the Truth Frequency Radio Network.
No hate, no hype, no fear.
There's something happening here, but what it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there, telling me I got to beware. I think it's time we stop, children. What's that sound? Everybody look what's going down.
Welcome back to the last segment of the Phoenix Rising Show here at TFR, www.tfrlive.com. Listen to us rant and rave and rant and Babylon, and please don't think I'm a negative Nelly about Thanksgiving. I enjoy the opportunity to get together and serve people because here in our home, we open the door to those that have no place to go for Thanksgiving, and we get a big old bird and a bunch of food, and we feed people. Because then if they don't eat all of it, then I got extra turkey, and then I got turkey wild rice all winter long. Turkey wild rice soup. Have you had that, Phoenix?
Never had that. You know, I love Thanksgiving too. You know, I was talking about the magical elixir of the gravy, but you know what, dude? I love dressing. Lake makes a bread stuffing that is just incredible. That's, you know, she can never make enough of it. And I love the leftovers. You know, I think there's something about the tryptophan in the turkey that people love. But I love it all, man. And we, you know, I love the whole big turkey. We do she does the dressing and usually some really good vegetables. And, you know, I'm not a big sweet eater, but I will at Thanksgiving eat pie. I will have, you know, the pumpkin pie or like, and the apple pie. But you got to have pumpkin pie with Thanksgiving. And, you know, a lot of people out there, you know, they can't really swing it and they have difficulty. And this is part of what we have to realize in you know, gaining community and being the best we can be. Donate to local food banks. You know, do things. I believe it's everyone's civic responsibility that we should do this. And morally, you don't have to do it continually. People burn out on this, but there are places where you can volunteer in community food places and actually do Thanksgiving meals for people who are less fortunate. They can't afford it, and some of these people have families, children, and so, you know, we have to really think about our fellow man. And, you know, many hands make for easy labor. We have to remember this as we give thanks, because everyone should be able to give thanks. And if we're just a few of us are giving thanks and there's people in need, that's not a thankful situation. It really isn't. We got to break away from that. We don't want to follow the old paradigm of the uber wealthy who only care about themselves. You know, I mean, we really have to look out for one another.
Well, absolutely, and it's one of my favorite songs with the Wookie Foot, the band that I really enjoy. But they have this one expression when they say, "You give what you can, and you take what you need." And I think it's a great way to live life, because there is consistently people that are less fortunate than us, and even in my situation, the cliche I go to is, the man was upset when he lost his shoes until he met the man who lost his feet. And so if you get the opportunity to give, even if it's something as little as giving a smile to somebody, then please do it, because it is the constant battle with today's society of the highs and the lows. And sometimes people with their seasonal depression get into the lows, as the northern hemisphere goes into Mother Nature's sleeping and slumber, as the bear gets ready to hibernate and prepare for the winter. As we all, and it's good that we have these holidays, because, sometimes it is rough to get through, that we need Thanksgiving and Christmas, and then Valentine's Day, New Year's Eve. Maybe as little times of cheer to get through the year. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Seems clear to me, my dear.
Oh, you're such a poet. Oh my God, it's so true though. I mean, it is so true. These are vital things for our soul, for our downtime. Even if you're alone, and you can do this if you. And I know there's someone listening to us tonight, maybe more than one person, who's alone. And you're probably thinking, I don't have family. Who will I be with on Thanksgiving? You know what? Be with yourself. Make it nice. This is the part of rising above and locking into a new direction. If you're alone, make it nice for yourself. Instead of bemoaning the fact that no one's there with you, know that God's with you, Spirit's with you, and people in heart may be with you. When was the last time you had a candlelight dinner alone? Made yourself a nice dinner and had a candlelight dinner and enjoyed your own company and just felt comfortable with it, because you're not alone. That's the thing. We live in a multidimensional reality, and just beyond what we can see, there are angels. There are spiritual beings with us. And, of both elk, by the way. That's why you want to make sure you're in a higher spiritual place, and through prayer and meditation, cleanse your space and surround yourself with good. Because even though we can't see it, it's there. But what I'm saying is, enjoy the season, enjoy Thanksgiving, even if it's you and a loved one, and you don't have a big gathering. Maybe you're missing your kids. They're miles away in different cities. They can't make it for whatever reasons. That's okay. Enjoy it. Enjoy the time yourself.
And if you're up here in the Fargo-Moorhead area, just hit me up. Find me on Facebook. Let me know you're in the area and send me a message.
How can people find you? You always talk about hit me up. How can people find you?
I'm up in, well, my email, my Gmail is one word, themegaphoneman@gmail.com. And the YouTube page I've been working with a little bit more is Cannabis Rez, R-E-Z, Solution. And on Facebook, it's the Megaphone Man on Facebook. And I should probably do something with Ney Sey, but I've been using that a lot for comedy. Well, and people call me that, but I've been putting it out there more as comedy. And I don't know how ready I am to come forth with all of my comedy and my hijinks, because I'm hilarious.
Yeah.
I am the highness of hijinks and hilarious.
Well, I'm sure you have high hopes of success.
Highly functional, highly functioning sociopath.
Oh man, that's a high bar to reach right there. Anyway, so back to the topic at hand, which is Thanksgiving and being thankful, and we can do this, and I think it's very important. I'm glad we're talking about this tonight because I started off with telling everyone we're rolling into this strange energetic time, which is what Laura Walker of the Oracle Report tagged a monk. Oh yeah, again, a reminder, everybody, go to the oraclereport.com and you can find the YouTube link of Laura and Andrew Foss, and you can find Andrew over at the Oracle Report Facebook page, and he hosts that. He's got over 10,000 members over there, and he and Laura get together usually for the new moon and talk about all the energetics, and it's very helpful, and you'll get a lot of information. Have a pen, paper, take some notes because she puts out some dates of some things that are coming up, and she also covered, by the way, in this last thing about her November 4th alert, and it's very interesting. She points out some very pertinent things that happened because it was like the day after was the shooting in the church in Texas there, and she had actually highlighted San Antonio, so she was pretty accurate with that, just 24 hours off, and it was one of our highlighted cities, plus a couple other things that happened. So be sure and go to the oraclereport.com and listen to that. It's good information. And again, go ahead, Ney Sey, you want to say something?
Well, I was just going to say, as we were discussing earlier, where people live in their surroundings and they learn these things through their experience, and sometimes we share it with each other where it's like, if you drive, this might help you drive more efficiently, or if you're going to garden, this is what you might do, and we're fortunate enough to have Laura Walker, give us some of these guides, to the possibilities that's out there, because being aware and recognizing the cycles, recognizing the patterns, that's our greatest gift. And if we get other people that can help guide us looking in the right direction, then hey, you're getting ahead of yourself, and that's not a bad place to be if it's in the positive. Exactly.
I heard one person describe astrology and the gift of astrology like an app. They said it's like an app that you can download to your phone. It's, it's not God. God creates the planets, but astrology is like downloading an app, and you can access it like GPS. How do I get to this point? What's coming up here? And that's what astrology does for us. Really, very handy. It's a good tool.
Well, and it's maybe a good thing to take a look at all of your relatives that are going to gather on Thanksgiving with you, and maybe look up their charts and see what they say on this day that you're going to gather, and it might give you a little heads up on how to travel or tread softly, or get ready for keep the hands and feet inside the ride at all times while it is in motion.
Oh yeah, without a doubt, because we're in a lot of motion here in the United States right now, because you were talking about the interesting conversations your grandfather would have with you every Thanksgiving. Man, the political divide that's going on in the nation right now, and what they're trying, because the archonic forces of the cabal, those that are entrenched in the swamp, if you will, they're pulling out all the stops. Man, we are at war. We are at war right now. It's just crazy. It's absolutely amazing to see what's happening. And the media and the lies that they're telling, the truths they're not telling. And it's a interesting fight. We do this. We read it. We watch it all the time, myself and Lake. over at Going Global East Meets West.blogspot.com, where her news blog is. And we get to the point where like, okay, that's it. Like today we had we got to get out of here. And we just bailed on everything. We shut the computers down. We're like, okay, let's go run an errand. And because you just got to shut yourself down from this stuff. And we're well insulated from it because we're aware of the shenanigans that it is. But a lot of people get really emotionally tied into all this stuff. The left, the right, Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservative, and people really carry these flags, dude. And they get so emotionally involved in this. I think we're going to have a lot of political heat, if you will, at the Thanksgiving tables this year. And
How many people do you think a year die yelling and screaming at the football game of a heart attack on Thanksgiving?
Don't tell me you actually have a stat on that. Do you have a stat on that?
2.
Or is that just two? 2 people?
Too many.
Too many. So you don't have the numbers. But I'm sure. I mean, it happens. Yeah. So
my brother was, sorry. Yeah, my brother was one who would start yelling and screaming at the TV. And I would always joke like, oh my God, did you see they stepped it up a little bit. They must have heard you.
Oh man. Yeah, I tell you, people get really emotionally entangled in this stuff. And it's like a game. They want you to be, in the politics and the sports, the bread and circuses. And it's probably best if you not be. I put that litmus test out there before about saying things about political parties. And if you say, one thing about this one or that one, if it emotionally, yanks your chain, then you need to stop and ask yourself why. Why are you, wherever you live, getting emotionally triggered because of some political argument? I mean, really, that means you're being played. Man, we can't allow this stuff to play us. We hope for the best, and we see certain things that look like there may be some resolution. But I tell you what, the ultimate resolution isn't going to come from a political movement or the barrel of a gun. This is going to be something bigger. And I think we're seeing it now. I actually think we see some supernatural things happening, Ney Sey.
Oh, absolutely. And if you look at what I call the holy trinity of positive, negative, and balance, there's that oscillation back and forth to positive and negative, but we spend more time in balance if you consider the time going from one side to the other also. But if we can find that state of balance and remain in that state of balance, things are so much easier than when they are one or the other, because when they become one or the other, then we tend to be more wrapped up in emotions of it. So in that quest of giving thanks for being tolerant of your family, see if you can find that thanks for yourself for being what you are. And if you need to change it, then be thankful that you have the ability to change.
Yeah, and to be aware of that. To be aware of that is very important. So, what are you looking forward to the most on your Thanksgiving feast?
I would have to say my biggest nemesis, mashed potatoes and gravy.
No way. Mashed potatoes and gravy. Yeah, well, see, I get a lot of that anyway because Lake's an Irish girl. She's got the Irish blood in her, Irish and German, and she loves her potatoes. So, yeah, what I like? Yams. I love yams. Don't get marshmallows near them. People do that. They ruin it. I don't believe marshmallows and yams should be in the same room. I think they're way separate. Okay. You'll save the marshmallows for the fire pit and the campfire and maybe hot chocolate but they should not delve into your Thanksgiving meal. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, we do the whole thing. We got this year I think we went with an 18-pound bird, which is actually smaller than what we did last year. We found a 24-pound bird, but it didn't fit in the roaster. And so I said go under 20, and the biggest they could find under 20 was 18. And so we got an 18-pound bird and got pumpkin, apple, and blueberry pie. We got 3 different squashes. We got the sweet potatoes or the yams and the regular potatoes. And I'm probably going to just do 2 types of stuffing this year. I'll probably just do a regular homemade from scratch stuffing and then a wild rice and bison stuffing on the side.
Oh, very good. That sounds so good. Do you cook yourself?
No, but I claim to be the head chef.
You supervise. Yeah, because I was wondering how that works being blind cooking. I
Yeah,
mean,
nobody gives me a knife anymore.
I'm sure. Oh, my God. Oh, that's funny. Oh, man.
What is
tell
your,
you what, how many...
Oh,
What's
go ahead,
that?
sorry.
No, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, what is your favorite to put your dressing on?
I just eat it. I just eat the dressing with
With a spoon. Just give me a spoon. You forgot the gravy.
I'm serious. We just, the turkey meat and whatever vegetables we have and, the stuffing, the yams. That's it. I mean, cranberries. Now, we do have a little bit of a conflict. We have an inner conflict here because traditionally, Lake likes, her family's done it this way, the canned cranberries. I like the whole cranberry where you boil them and do all that thing. But, that's just not the way her family did it. So it's a traditional family thing. But that's the only difference. I love it all, though. It's absolutely.
Well, I misspoke. I meant to say, what do you like? What's your favorite thing to pour the gravy on top to? And I was adding in my head, I said stuffing, and I'm.
Oh yeah, I do that. I put it on stuffing. I put it on the gravy. All that, man. I love it.
Everything. I put the gravy on everything.
Well, there's another thing though. People must be aware of. If you're going to have a whipped cream on your pumpkin pie, make sure it's whipped cream. Do not get the vegetable oil stuff, which is like they call, what do they call that? Cool Whip or something. It's actually made from like vegetable oil. It's not, there's no dairy in it. Don't do that. I mean, heck, you're going all out anyway. Go with real whipped cream. Either whip it up yourself or buy it in a spray can, like the Ready Whip. You just squirt it out of the.
And if I may suggest humbly to all of you that are cooking Thanksgiving, whatever you can cook prior to Thanksgiving and just heat up on the day, do it. It's not a big deal if it's not made absolutely that day. Take the stress from you, ladies, and get those lazy men in the kitchen to do dishes.
Yeah, it's usually better the next day. That's what we do, and the only thing that's really usually done on the actual day is roasting of the turkey, and everything else was done the day prior. And I think it's better because I think the stuffing's better, everything's better after it's kind of like marinates.
Yes, it sits in its juices, especially with the stuffing.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh my God, now I'm getting anxious.
That's cool. The bottom line to all this, everybody be thankful, say no to fear, and no matter what's going on, and there may be some crazy stuff happening, shut it all down, find that gratitude in your heart, and say a prayer. Say a prayer.
The only anxiety this year, I'm going to make a proclamation. The only anxiety that I will accept is if there's not enough gravy.
Not enough stuffing. No, you're wrong. You got to have enough stuffing. The elixir, the magical elixir, which is gravy, you got to have that too. So we got 3 minutes. What would you like to say to everybody before we roll out of here?
Well, Phoenix, are we almost coming up upon a year with me. Did I start with you just before Christmas last year? Or was it after?
After. I think it was after. Yeah.
Okay, I was trying to figure this out, but you know, in the whole tradition of saying thanks, Phoenix, I want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my insanity with you all, and I do greatly appreciate it. And I hope that I'm living right by your standards and by the standards of what you, the audience, expect from me. And if you want me to step up my game, let me know. Send me an email, themegaphoneman@gmail.com. And guest, I'm talking to some people, and me and Phoenix have been talking about them. And yeah, so hopefully New Year guest.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, speaking of guests, Fred, you've never talked to Fred. Fred from Alaska. We used to call him. He lived in Alaska. Now we call him Fred from everywhere. I was talking to him the other day. He's going to be on soon to give us an update. He sold a business, he and his wife, up in Alaska, Homer, Alaska, and they've been traveling the world for the past 2 years doing professional house setting. And dude, they've been all over the world. So he's going to call in some evening, and we're going to set it up. I'll make sure you're on so you can talk to him, and he's going to give us an update, a roving update of what's happening. But anyway, I appreciate everybody listening in, and this is an interesting time we're in. This weekend, the new moon starts, and it's going to kick off a day, like a 33 days, 34 days of very interesting times. Things are going to kind of run amok. So we will need that space and that time to give thanks. And I give thanks right now for all of you, everybody listening, and to Ney Sey. You've done a great job. You always do. I give thanks for you and all of our friends and everybody listening right now. I really appreciate everyone. And I ask that you find someone you love and tell them that you love them.
Apegish bimad beziwe win. Toodles.
Toodles. Toodles indeed. And that's it, people. We're out of here. We'll be back on Tuesday. Have a good weekend. Good night.